Do you remember your childhood teddy bear? What did it look like? Did you wish that it would walk around with you and play with you? Well, this SCP might have been exactly what you were looking for. Just be thankful that you didn't actually have this toy as a kid. SCP-1048 is a small teddy bear around 33 centimeters in height. There doesn't seem to be anything differentiating it from a regular teddy bear except for one thing: it can move on its own. It walks around and communicates through a small range of gestures. Affectionate and endearing to people it encounters, it likes to give people little hugs on the leg, likes to dance and jump in place, and it's been known to draw childlike pictures. Direct communication has yet to be successful, and although it will answer yes or no questions, it will not react to lines of questioning about its nature or its origin, nor will it use its artistic abilities to communicate anything beyond showing affection. Seems pretty cute and nice, right? Why should we be worried about this one escaping? Oh, that's right, because it's actually terrifying and bloodthirsty. At one point, this teddy bear was actually classified as safe, but has since been reclassified to the extremely dangerous keter. About 7 months after being secured, anomalous behavior started to be observed. It constructed crude replicas of itself using various materials without anyone's knowledge. Some believe that it used its endearing qualities to lull those around it into a false sense of security. Currently, we know about 3 of its creations, designated SCP-1048-A, B, and C. The behavior of these replicas is different from the original, as they all exhibit extreme violence towards humans. 1048-A is a teddy resembling the original, but disgustingly enough, is comprised entirely of human ears. You heard me right, it is a teddy b-ear. When discovered by a group of people at the containment site, 1048-A emitted a high-pitched shriek, hurting the eyes and ears of all nearby. Ear-like growths then started to form all over the bodies of people nearby, and anyone affected died of asphyxiation within 3 minutes. The asphyxiation is caused by a multitude of ear-shaped growths suddenly developing in the mouth and trachea of all the victims. That has to be one of the grossest ways to go. I bet there's tiny little earwax in there too. Ugh. 1048-C is a little guy made up of rusted metal scraps that has been witnessed killing and maiming multiple Foundation members. A report from a doctor on the scene stated, "I cannot stress this enough. The damn thing jumped through those poor people. A rusty scrap bear blasting through your chest cavity. Yikes." I don't even want to discuss 1048-B as it is so extremely disturbing, like seriously. The information about this one is actually being withheld from survivors of this incident that are undergoing therapy because it's believed to be something that will be highly detrimental to their recovery. The link to this SCP is in the description, so if you're still curious, you can read it yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you. As of right now, 1048 and its counterparts are nowhere to be found, but it is suspected to be somewhere within Site-24. Let's just hope that it doesn't sneak its way out and find more materials to work with. I'll leave this one with one more quote from Dr. Carver. "This is not a joke. We have no idea what SCP-1048's full capabilities are. Who knows how many of the damn things are out there by now." Number 4. SCP-902. This one is a perfect example of the old saying, innocence is bliss. Relegated to the Arctic base Theta-12, it is the only SCP to be contained at this site. There are 50 security personnel keeping watch at all times, and no research is to be done on this object. It is considered imperative that only a very limited number of senior Foundation staff know about this. It is so dangerous that in the event of a security breach, the whole facility will be demolished by way of hydrogen bomb. That is some serious security. The item itself is what appears to be an ammunition box roughly the size of a human head. It's made of lead, and the composition of the item inside it is unknown. It's constantly ticking, and anyone who hears this becomes convinced that the item is counting down to something. When it's opened, it appears empty, but the ticking continues. Anyone who becomes aware of SCP-902 immediately becomes convinced that it is horribly dangerous and needs to be destroyed as soon as it finishes counting down. Staff who are exposed to the box will try to open and close it over and over again, looking for the item inside. The end of the report on this item actually implies that even knowing about this box will doom someone to a form of madness. It reads, "There is no object. There is an object. It has to be destroyed when the countdown stops. We are doing great work. We have to be stopped." Looks like the box has already implanted its mind hooks firmly into that report writer. Suppose that means that I've been exposed to this box as well. And now that I've made this video, so have you. Can anyone else hear that? That ticking? Oh, it can't be me, I'm wearing a digital watch. I mean, we should go find that box. Who's with me? Number 3, SCP-4480. I always knew that snake oil salesmen were trouble, but this SCP brings it to a whole other level. SCP-4480 is a humanoid entity able to adjust its appearance and produce identification at will. It is known to have had influence over many bureaucratic structures throughout the world, including the Foundation. 4480 is always selling patent medicine, homeopathic remedies, and mercurial substances with dubious medical value. So, like I said before, a snake oil salesman. The gender, sex, race, height, and other physical attributes of this disgraced doctor can vary based on the context of its location. I guess that means that it could very well become an Instagram influencer, hawking hair tonic and skinny tea. It will spend most of its time dormant, during which it travels to locations known to be suffering from epidemics, disease, addiction, and mental illness. Almost always, it will head to disease vectors like factories, shipping centers, or between offices and other bureaucratic structures. Often these places are where individuals sacrifice their physical and mental well-being for perceived economic and social gains. Once there, it will offer medical services to the individuals, sometimes helpful, sometimes harmful, and sometimes with placebo effects. This snake oil salesman really commits to the act. Once accepted by the community, it will begin an activity the Foundation has classified as VEX events. It will use its power to change policies and procedures in organizations to create dangerous and hostile work environments. Laborers will be deliberately exposed to disease and unclean materials. Once this happens, the diseases spread quickly in communities. Depending on the number of casualties caused by these outbreaks, SCP-4480 will gain an increased quantity of its medical merchandise. This could be the motivation for these VEX events, as Dr. Snake Oil over here has been known to self-medicate. It has been around for at least a century, and we're unclear as to how many bureaucratic organizations it has infiltrated. Currently, it's being monitored by the Foundation in a containment facility where it is believed to be acting as Dr. Sam Edwards. If Edwards decides to move somewhere else, the Foundation is sure to follow. Number 2, SCP-2628. I have a creeping suspicion that this one has already evaded the containment procedures put into place by the Foundation. I know a lot of people who exhibit symptoms of contact with this. We're all on our phones and computers so much anyway, and most people probably wouldn't even notice. SCP-2628 is a botnet comprised of an unknown amount of internet-connected devices. It is currently unknown who's responsible for it. Botnet intercepts and falsifies content shown to users of affected devices. The alterations are difficult to predict, but several major trends have been identified. Employment/academic opportunities and social gatherings are altered to seem unappealing or inconvenient, except when they can be performed mostly on the affected device. Content describing negative consequences of sedentary behavior and/or extended computer usage is deleted. Communications expressing concern or disapproval of the user's behavior instead express acceptance or approval. The utility of various activities that conflict with the usage of the affected device, example, sleeping, driving, and bathing, are understated. And services that enable greater usage of the affected device, like online food delivering, telecommuting, and other utilities, are promoted. Outdoor air pollution is overstated and indoor air pollution is understated. These are all things that would encourage the user to stay indoors and keep on using that device as much as possible. Imagine if all the concerts and parties and work opportunities that you were invited to were changed to look impossible to attend through anything other than your phone. Usually the alterations are believable in both content and presentation, but they do become more dramatic when the device is in use for an extended period of time. These phones are sucking people in and not letting them go. I wouldn't be surprised if it were actually brainwashing and staging people for further manipulation. Matrix, here we come. Heavy use of the infected device actually seems to heighten the mood of users, and there are severe withdrawal symptoms when one is forced to use uninfected devices or perform other activities. Modern addiction at its finest. Devices infected with SCP-2628 may be destroyed or kept for study as necessary, and any civilian known to have used an infected device is given amnetics and a replacement device. Somehow, these measures just don't seem like enough to stop the spread of this botnet. We all know how fast things can go viral. Number 1, SCP-2006. Before we can get into this one, Think of the absolute scariest thing you can. Losing a family member, nuclear war, Lovecraftian outer gods. Have you thought of something? Good. Keep that in mind as we proceed. SCP-2006 is an anomalous spherical entity roughly 50 centimeters in diameter when in its default state. It has stated that its goal is to cause feelings of fear and or horror in as many humans as possible. It can change into any form while pursuing this goal, altering its shape, mass, volume, density, chemical structure, voice, and more. The extent of these abilities is unknown, but assumed to be unlimited. There is no way to damage it. Every month, it must be shown at least one new, extremely low quality horror or science fiction movie containing horror elements. All interaction with SCP-2006 must confirm that it continues to believe that said works demonstrate a superb grasp of horror. All staff coming into contact with it must also take an acting course with a focus on expressing fear and surprise. This is because it will attempt to startle and or scare any individual that it comes in contact with. After it's been satisfied with the fear being exhibited by personnel, it becomes affable and friendly. Even with its goal being to cause as much fear as possible, it's not so good at judging what people are actually scared of. It's constantly searching for new methods, thus the bad horror movies. It loves taking the form of various entities and villains from horror and sci-fi movies it has witnessed. Are you starting to understand why it only gets to watch really bad, not scary horror? The site director at Site 118 issued a memorandum regarding SCP-2006. I have been getting reports of some of the lax behavior regarding SCP-2006. Many personnel have been heard laughing at SCP-2006 during surveillance when it watches a new movie or when it attempts to scare individuals. Some personnel have been heard questioning why SCP-2006 is classified as a Keter entity. I am here to remind you that a Keter entity is a Keter entity, regardless of how innocuous it may seem. No, SCP-2006 is not a rampaging demigod, nor is it a regenerating super lizard. However, it possesses the same level of danger as any other Keter that the Foundation has contained. Think of SCP-2006's purpose. It wishes to scare people. Imagine what would happen if SCP-2006 broke containment and found out what really scared people. Imagine if it saw the horror and fear of war, or the concepts of paranoia or phobias common to each and every human being. Imagine if it found the true horror of a nuclear holocaust or an XK class scenario. Now, couple that with an entity that possesses shape-shifting abilities with no known limits, and you'll understand why it's classified as Keter. So think back to what I had you imagine at the beginning of this entry. If 2006 were to escape, it would likely find you one day and enact the very thing that frightens you to your core. And once it comes across the more existential fears inside humans, oh boy. Kicking us off at number 5, we have SCP-860. Now, some doors are just meant to remain shut. Nowhere is this more apparent than within the pocket dimension SCP-860 brings into existence. The SCP itself is a dark blue key that looks like any other key. At random, a series of numbers will appear on it, representing coordinates for somewhere in the world. So far, the coordinates have marked out locations in Germany, England, and at a Foundation site. The key will fit into any door lock in the area of the given coordinates. When the key is inserted and turned to open the door, the threshold will lead to a different location. A small forest clearing with a footpath will be revealed with blue mist hanging in the air. As soon as someone enters the door, it will automatically close and lock behind them, leaving them alone in the forest. No turning back. If the subject follows the footpath, they will be led to another similar door, which will lead to the usual location of the original door. Through many explorations of this area, some strange occurrences have been discovered. Weird, distorted howls have been reported by subject, as well as the sensation that they're being followed. The first couple subjects made it through alright, although the second reported being beckoned by something. The subject disappeared off the path to follow it, and the key remained stuck in the door for 7 months. Nothing was going to remove it. At the end of this time, the subject returned, noticeably aged and with a calmer demeanor than before. Subject 3 attempted to destroy the door, which apparently was a very bad call, because then a large paw appeared on the camera feed and no one's heard from them since. In the most recent exploration following that one, the mist actually appeared red instead of blue, and the path changed from dirt to cobblestones and also became forked. The man was hunted by whatever had been stalking the pines up till this point, and before audio cut out, a strange noise was heard. If you take the clip and play it backwards, you hear I see you. What the motives of the creature are, I cannot claim to know. But what I do know is that it's big, strong, creepy, has yellow eyes, and is able to kill humans. If it escapes the anomalous doors, it can and likely will wreak havoc. Coming in at number 4, we have SCP-3312. This memetic agent exists under the false identity of a fan website. It sneaks its way into people's lives and makes them compulsively consume products, media, and content related to various fan bases. The most notable fan base related to 3312 involves furries, a tale as old as the internet. However, the anomalous effects will only take hold of those with no prior involvement in the furry community. So upon being exposed to the memetic agent, folks will display a heightened interest in anthropomorphic characters in mainstream media. Sonic the Hedgehog, anybody? This will intensify over time through 6 marked stages. Soon they'll initiate participation in the furry community, including the creation of a persona and joining in on the roleplay. After this, affected individuals will seek out internet users who share negative views on the community and also expose them to 3312, bringing them into that community. At this point, the spread increases exponentially and anyone involved will become borderline obsessive. This could look like many things, including running several role-playing accounts, the purchase of animal costumes, consistent attempts to contact a prominent member of the community called Ollie Fox, and the creation of a political party concerning the desires of furries. After this, the individuals will assume the role of a prepubescent child and will cease to be able to attend their own needs. Their living conditions rapidly become unfit for any human, and they abandon any people outside of their online community. Then they'll undergo the delusion that they are indeed an anthropomorphic character and perpetuate this by any means necessary. This results in rejection by the non-anomalous community, following events like attempted intercourse with animals, heat-related deaths associated with animal costumes, deaths from great heights among those with winged animal characters, and firearm attacks. The final stage of this anomalous transformation involves total loss of higher cognitive functions. The individuals will regress to instinctual behaviors and their prior personality will be destroyed. They still possess human speech, but it'll be characterized by childlike pronunciations and heightened pitch. The final stage also involves heightened aggression towards all people, and the 3312 sufferers will kill indiscriminately, all while saying things like, "Hello, Mr. Police Officer." My goodness. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-2718. Now this one's interesting because some Foundation personnel want it buried, while others think the world has a right to know about it. We'll see if it ever makes it to the public at large. 2718 is apparently a cognitohazard, but if you look a little closer, you'll notice that it's actually just insanely hard to find in the Foundation database. It's consistently being pushed deeper and deeper and deeper with additional layers of security added. The fact that it's on Dameron clearance is stated like 5 times in the article. Plus the classification and number keep changing, so somebody wants to make sure this stays hidden. So what is 2718 really? Are you sure you want to know? Okay. Well, it's the fact that your mind and consciousness remain in your corpse after you die. This means that you feel your own body decaying, breaking down, being consumed, etc. And the pain doesn't stop when your body ceases to be either. Nope. Everyone will just be in intense agony forever and ever and ever. No mouth, no screaming, just immeasurable pain, even after the worms are done with you. This was all discovered when the Council resurrected 0511, who then reported on what the afterlife was like. Pretty terrible by the sounds of it. Everyone is afraid of this discovery and its implications. For those reasons, the 05 Council has decided to try to stop human death forever. So far, they haven't been too successful. Soon after the initial discovery, somebody clued into the fact that everyone is anomalously scared of 2718, and it should probably be erased from memory altogether. But before it could be totally wiped, 0511 decided that people had a right to know and ensured that if somebody tried to delete or edit the entry, large portions of the database would become corrupted. The Council still went through with their plans though, killed 05, and erased 2718 from everyone's minds. Now it's chilling in the deep dark depths, trying its best not to be discovered. But now you know! Who's excited for an eternity of formless suffering? Clawing its way in at number 2, we have SCP-2571. We're not really sure if this is a real place or not, but ideally it will be prevented from spreading any further than it already has. This is quite difficult though, as it's just a dream, affecting people with seemingly no pattern. Cragglewood Park consistently appears in the dreams of 0.05% of the world's population. It's mostly common among adults who are raised as only children, but this is only one trend that's been identified. The dreams are largely upsetting to those who experience them, as they associate them with their own memories even though there's no evidence of them ever being to the seemingly fictional theme park. Amnestics do purge these memories at first, but they always seem to resurface once treatment wraps up. Wherever these memories are coming from, they want to remain in the minds of people no matter what. Recurring themes include being between the ages of 4 and 12 while visiting, there being numerous anthropomorphic trees and plants present, no adults around, calliope music, and other unknown children being around. And there's only one ride, and that ride is a carousel. While there were always other kids on the carousel, the subjects interviewed never rode. You'd think that a theme park would involve all smiles and laughter, right? Well, the kids in the memories do smile and laugh, but only to keep from crying. Subjects have claimed to want to keep the trees happy, to ensure that they didn't know they were scared. But this is all a dream, right? What's the big deal? Well, actually, one subject in particular found an old cassette tape labeled Cragglewood in their childhood home. It documents the experience of 2 children making their way through the park. In the end, one child has to go on the carousel and one does not. This knowledge is very upsetting to the 2 children, and after some teary-eyed goodbyes, they part ways. Screen grabs from the tape were uploaded to the wiki, and let's just say I can understand why the kids were so upset. These smiling tree mascots are not as friendly as one might imagine. And it seems that being raised as a single child doesn't always mean you never had a sibling. Just don't follow the organ music, alright? And lastly, at number 1, we have SCP-2480. The Sarkics are one of the most prolific and dangerous groups of interest in the SCP universe, and this town is no exception. Right now it's presumed neutralized, which is a freaky little classification. It went from safe to Keter to we really don't know where this is. Oh geez. 2480 is a dimensional anomaly in Massachusetts centered around a manor owned by someone in the cult known as Adytum's Wake. Adytum is a city ruled over by the Grand Karcist Ion. It seems that the Wake is trying to kill Ion, potentially to take control of some of these Sarkic sects. Whatever ritual that was performed here went terribly wrong though, leading to some deaths in the family. Self-inflicted gunshot wounds, implosion, fatal physical reconfiguration, you know, all the normal stuff. Researchers had noticed all sorts of weirdness in the town, like way too many children in each house and suspicious deaths, but didn't know the truth of it until they started taking exploratory DMT. This drug allowed people to see beyond the veneer into the strange warped reality. The town was full of invisible hooded figures with buildings made of flesh. The messages "he is dreaming war" and "Adytum will rise" are found, which seems to me like a doomsday waiting to happen. And of course, what is a creepy Lovecraftian town without some monsters? 2480 is home to massive humanoids, 4 meters tall, covered in pale, flabby flesh, walking around with their massive toothy mouths and 3-fingered hands covered in viscera. Do not approach them, okay? It's been discovered that the flesh around town is mostly human, and that this reality is actually bleeding into ours. The Foundation and the Global Occult Coalition have teamed up to manage this anomaly, which is a sure sign of something crazy going on, because there's no explanation for these 2 organizations working together. None. So buckle up and maybe leave New England to the New Englanders. We're not really sure what's gonna happen. Presumed neutralized. Yeah, right. Coming in at number 5, we have SCP-659. If you saw Finding Nemo while still a child, you know very well how terrifying waterfowl with a group mentality can be. I get flashbacks every time someone says mine, but those gulls have nothing on the horrifying herons I'm about to introduce to you. SCP-659 is a species of birds resembling herons that display modular intelligence. I'll get to what that means in a second. There's only one flock known to the Foundation, and they seem to be native to North America, although there have been unconfirmed sightings in Europe. These birds can subsist on any meat they can find, but will stick to fish if it's available. When an individual specimen is isolated from the flock, it acts just like any other heron would. It's more intelligent than your average feathered friend, however, as it can solve simple problems, use tools, and learn very quickly. Now, to bring us back to modular intelligence, when more than one of these birds comes near each other, they gain combined intelligence. The more birds there are together, the smarter they become. It seems that there's an approximately 25-meter limit to this particular talent though. They don't have a hive mind, nor do they display telepathic abilities, but flocks are extremely well coordinated in their actions. If enough birds gather, they display human-like intelligence and sapience, and can actually learn at a faster rate than most humans. Some birds have even been documented learning French and English. They have used these smarts to break out of Foundation containment on multiple occasions. Upon being brought back in, Foundation researchers found that keeping each heron isolated at the distance exceeding 25 meters prevents them from gaining enough intelligence to escape. And all this seems pretty cool, right? Like, those are some pretty neat birds. Well, SCP-659 and all of its instances are vigorously hostile towards humans, and it's probably our fault. Before the first recorded containment, flocks in the wild did not display any sort of aggression towards humans. However, as detailed in Incident 659A, these birds are none too happy about being contained. Following a containment breach that resulted in the death of all on-site personnel save a few, the murderous birds were interviewed by a researcher. They had pecked holes in the tires of all vehicles, cut phone lines, and actually sent a flying sentry up to keep watch over the facility. When asked why they did this, one heron stepped up to the glass and wrote messages in blood from another heron in containment at the time. The messages were, "Don't act like don't know. You started this," and "freedom." No one tell Tippy Hedren. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-772. If the bugs from last time didn't get your skin crawling, this one sure will. 772 is a gigantic species of wasp, possibly dating back to prehistoric times. Dino wasps, if you will. A mature adult is typically 60 centimeters and can actually reach up to 70 when the antenna and ovipositor are included. They have extremely tough exoskeletons that are actually resistant to gunfire. This wasp has been shot and survived. Something tells me a raid might not work either. These humongous insects will fly around and deposit their eggs in large mammals, leaving the larvae to hatch and eat their way out. Using their sharp and maneuverable egg tube, they can lay between 5 and 20 eggs, all around 6 centimeters in length and 2.5 centimeters in width, before leaving the incisions to heal. So they can also use their pointy end as a weapon and stab their victims repeatedly, sometimes even resulting in bone penetration. I usually prefer my bones unpenetrated, thank you very much. The eggs will then incubate for 4 to 12 days, and as they grow nearer to hatching, the stress levels in the host will go up. You know, the kind of stress that happens when baby wasps are about to hatch under your skin and eat their way out. If you go and see a doctor, it's likely that they will mistake the bugs as abscesses or tumors. And what's extra fun about this bit is that as they burrow deeper into you, it'll seem like the lumps are just going away on their own. Nothing to worry about here, just becoming a host body for half-meter yellow jackets. The etymologist that discovered 772 actually cut himself open when he realized what would happen. They remain carnivorous even after their pupal state and can sometimes become cannibalistic in resource-deficient environments. Thankfully, all reported instances of this SCP are under Foundation control now, hermetically sealed in a chamber with a maximum capacity of 15 wasps to keep them from getting unruly. They've been known to break out of enclosures before. Hopefully, the incineration failsafe stays operational. Kill it with fire, always a good option. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-274. If Banksy and an SCP had a baby, this would be it. A can of spray paint with many variable colors, this SCP has the consistency of normal paint. Grossly enough, it has been discovered that the composition is actually 28% hemoglobin, 12% gastric acid, and then 60% regular paint. Once sprayed all over a wall, it will spread until it covers the entire wall and any walls attached. This usually takes the form of large and disturbing designs. Any building taken over by it will be converted into an organism that functions similarly to the species of the Anthozoa class. Common examples of this would be anemones, stony corals, and soft corals. Buildings infected by SCP-274 are predatory and will lure victims in by emitting alarming noises. Broken glass, loud coughing, painful whines, and whimpers will be heard by all passersby. Once a human enters, these noises will stop immediately. Victims are then suctioned into the building's newly formed gastrovascular cavity and often grabbed by entities known as SCP-274-2. These are humanoid figures wearing gas masks that can flatten out and take the form of graffiti. Our gas mask wearing assailants will spray victims in the eyes and mouth with SCP-274, which has a blinding and numbing effect. It's assumed that victims are then assimilated into other instances of SCP-274-2. If there are too many of these particular humanoids in any given building, one will have to leave and then go and spray a new one. If left unchecked, it is estimated that they could take over a large city in less than a month. Currently, Foundation Task Force Pi 1, aka City Slickers, is watching all known instances preventing folks from entering, and they're also burning down the infected buildings. Coming in at number 2, we have SCP-2675. Russia. This SCP is a Soviet-made Arktika-class nuclear-powered icebreaker ship named Sibir. Official records say it was retired, but later it was found out that it disappeared while investigating an anomalous artifact in the Arctic Ocean. It can spontaneously change shape, add new structures, equipment, and weaponry. It also generates neutron radiation. The water around it is often seen glowing blue. This shape-shifting ship can also vanish from one location and manifest elsewhere. The limits and nature of this power are currently unknown, although the use of it often coincides with a spike in radiation. Unfortunately, this kick-ass ship is hostile and dangerous. Come on, can't we just have some cool stuff? On board is a discrete entity known as SCP-2675-1. It appears to be an adult human male fluent in Russian, French, and English. Intelligent and violent, he claims to be a herald of a previously undocumented god. In a transmission from the ship, 2675-1 announces that he sails for the god-child, born of the atom. He and his crew are no longer life, but time and energy. Based on information from other transmissions and reports, we have a vague idea of how he and the ship came to be. At some point while investigating the anomaly in the Arctic Ocean, something must have happened to the nuclear power source aboard the Sibir. This vaporized everyone on board, but eventually they rematerialized in this kind of host entity. Think like a Dr. Manhattan at sea. Those who were and reconstructed now see nuclear power as a godchild who needs to be cradled and cared for, whose love needs to be shared with all men. So this seafaring blue ghoul wants everyone to be broken down into atoms so they can finally see the warmth and love of the atomic godchild. Love it. And finally, number 1, SCP-2521. This one is absolutely fascinating, and if you haven't heard of it already, I would highly recommend checking out the original report on the SCP Wiki. Unfortunately, I am dooming myself and all of you by speaking about it aloud. Knowledge is power, but the way that this one works means we're all screwed. Sorry. Stop listening now if you enjoy living and breathing with a grand total of 0 tentacles pulling you into an unknown zone. Okay, SCP-2521 is a humanoid entity over 2 meters in height with sticky tendrils at the end of each arm. It appears to be black or dark gray with an odd little pentagon-shaped head. It can pass through solid objects, and as such is very difficult to contain. It absolutely loves collecting information about itself, and really likes when people discuss it out loud. Any instance of written or spoken information about SCP-2521 can be sensed by it, and will promptly be collected. Yes, this includes people who know and speak about it. Where does it take this information? Nobody knows. Personally, I like the idea that it takes all of this information to some unnamed location and protects it, kind of like a dragon hoarding gold. Thankfully for the Foundation, SCP-2521 doesn't seem to understand anything done up in symbols or pictographs. Pictures, videos, signs, and graphics are all fair game too. So considering now that I have been speaking very candidly about our tentacled friend, I should probably get going. Stick to symbols, folks. Kicking us off at number 5, we have SCP-3253, the Prison of Ink and Flesh. Sounds pretty wicked, right? I'd watch that movie, I'd read that book. This anomaly is a phenomenon that only manifests when one specific subject uses a handmade needle to tattoo images onto another specific subject's skin. It's very specific, very odd. The image tattooed must resemble an object, person, time, place, or phenomenon that the tattooee has come into contact with and can recall. Once the tattoo is finished, the object being represented by the tattoo will disappear and instead become of the subject's skin. Indeed, a fleshy, inky prison. This works for pretty much any physical thing, including humans. If you want that thing back, it is possible to bring it back into existence by destroying the image. However, whatever damage you do to the image will also happen to the object itself. If you laser remove it, the object will end up being badly burned. If you scratch it out completely, it'll have those same scratches when returning to the world. So if you were thinking you could use this guy's skin for storage, you better reconsider that if you want your object back in the same condition that you started it. Properties of this anomaly were discovered when both subjects subjects were being held as D-class. The tattooee is an ex-yakuza who collects tattoos of people he's killed. He believes that if he can get it out of his head and onto his skin, he can forget it, which in a way is doubly true thanks to the anomalous properties. After being a test subject for a redacted SCP, he had an image representing it tattooed onto his skin. This resulted in the SCP disappearing from containment, causing a whole lot of confusion. The tattoo artist is a man implicated in a series of murders, spending his time in D-class confinement giving other subjects tattoos. For whatever reason, the effects will only manifest if these two men are the only ones involved and are using a certain handmade tattoo needle. However, the tattoo artist is currently in a self-induced coma, likely due to the stress induced through testing 3253. Nobody's sure as to when he may recover, so in the meantime, this is a relatively safe SCP. But imagine what could be done with this power if they were both outside containment and fully aware of the possibilities. They get a lot done. Coming in at number 4, SCP-3646. As if regular mosquitoes weren't bad enough, now we've got phantom mosquitoes. Thankfully, these nasty nits are easy to tell apart from the generic ones. Pale white coloration and an odd feathery appendage extruding from the abdomen will tell you whether or not you're dealing with ghostly bloodsuckers. Instances of 3646 do not show signs of aging, have an unknown lifespan, and are sexless. They reproduce via anomalous means, as large amounts of new instances will appear on or near a corpse killed by other 3646s. All this is anomalous, yes, but the real weirdness begins after one dies. After brain functions cease, the next organism to come into contact with the corpse will display a progression of anomalous symptoms. There are 6 stages in all, getting progressively worse over the course of days. Stage 1 has the subject begin experiencing mild auditory hallucinations, like the sound of a mosquito flying past their ears, you know, that high-pitched whining. Stage 2 sees these hallucinations double in frequency, often causing what seems like simultaneous noises. The subject will also develop seemingly permanent goosebumps and try to cover exposed skin as much as possible. The next stage begins producing tactile hallucinations on the subject's limbs and neck, causing extreme agitation. These physical sensations can be stopped by swatting at their locations. Then the hallucinations become constant, leading to sleep deprivation and panic, as well as intense itching all over. By stage 5, welts similar to regular mosquito bites will develop all over their body, and subjects report that the buzzing has intensified into something that can be described as screaming. Then, in the final stage, all the blood in their body will start to dematerialize, leading to complete exsanguination and death. If anyone can think of a worse way to go, please let me know. Invisible, unkillable mosquitoes draining every last drop. I'm imagining a deflation scenario like the one from the Spookies, or maybe Wax Mask. Either way, good lord. Coming in at number 3, SCP-4308. The classical magical guitar trope. It's every high schooler's dream. I'm gonna write some songs and express my innermost feelings, and finally everyone's gonna understand me. In fact, they better do more than understand me. They need to experience the exact thing that I'm experiencing. Cue maniacal teen laughter. 4308 is a black Steinberger scepter that exhibits anomalous properties when played. Anyone subject to the music produced by it will enter an illusory state, representing the tune of the song in terms of motion. So if the song is happy, they'll experience an elating illusion, and if it's sad, they'll be exposed to some downer dreams. Either way, the illusory state will cease when the sound has stopped being produced. The player, however, is unaffected by this, otherwise it might end in some sort of infinite loop of emotions, just like life. Too much? The guitar was found in the possession of Duke, a moody, melancholy guitarist who seems to want to impose his high school tear sadness and anger on everyone around. He was reported to make songs like Lonesome, which made people in the crowd disappear into shadows and think lonely thoughts. Overshadowed, which made people think about childhood friends that were treated better than them. Horrible Pain, which seemed to bring up images of screaming, gunshots, knife wounds, and corpses. And Heartbroken, which literally had a person envision the removal and shattering of their own heart. Subtle songwriting. This guy will go far. It should be safe in the Foundation's security locker, but if a major moody star got their hands on this, we'd be in for one hell of an emotional roller coaster. Coming in number 2, we've got SCP-4106, the tragic tale of the lovebird. Aw man. 4106 is a particularly strong and smart bird who only likes one researcher. Anyone else will get bit, resulting in the manifestation of 4106-1, another lovebird. This bird will bite and hurt 4106, and then they will cuddle for about an hour before it flies away. Sounds like some of my old flames. I'm kidding! Maybe. When 4106 flies away, it cannot be stopped as it seems to be able to fly straight through solid objects. While hard to contain, this doesn't seem too dangerous, right? Essentially being lovebirds. Well, the major focus of the story might be on 4106 itself, but it presents plenty of ideas about the functioning of the Foundation that have wider reaching implications. In fact, this entry is a story of the loss of funding leading to the downfall of security protocol. Originally, 4106 was classified as safe. It was kept in a cage with electromagnetic locks and taken care of appropriately. There is zero chance of escape or of manifesting 4106-1. However, as government funding and other resources decreased, it became harder to contain 4106. Eventually, it was upgraded to Euclid and then Keter. The electromagnetic locks were replaced with padlocks. Staffing on site was reduced. Soon, it was moved to a small remote shack with little to no actual security. If the Foundation was having so much trouble containing a slightly above average lovebird, imagine what was happening elsewhere with more dangerous and volatile entities. Not ideal, as you might be able to imagine. If Mr. Seeds over here can just fly right out, I'd rather not be anywhere near any of the other sites. If we're to follow through on this canon, we'd also find out that the Global Occult Organization was given free reign by governments to destroy entities wherever appropriate. And knowing the GOC, wherever appropriate means at the drop of a hat. That's a dark, dark universe we're looking in. All because of a little bird. And finally at number 1, SCP-4798. Oh, so you're into poetry. Name 5 poets. Recite a stanza. Tell me about transgenic poetry. Oh, you can't? Fake poetry fan over here doesn't even know about the anomalous process of using written words to synthesize nucleotides and DNA. Okay, I'm never doing that bit again, I'm sorry. SCP-4798 is a population of anomalous organisms, mostly flora, that exist as a product of transgenic poetry. It can spread to other biological organisms as it is pseudomimetic in nature. This often leads to mutations in said organisms, which results in anomalous properties manifesting. This is especially obvious in humans as they tend to demonstrate a heightened understanding of the meaning and semantic nature of 4798. And of course, you should always be wary of someone who suddenly claims to understand poetry. The anomalous properties are varied across different subjects, ranging from relatively harmless to extremely dangerous. Harmless instances can be stuff like creating specific weather patterns to draw lines in the sand, or only being capable of existing while standing on paper. Dangerous ones can be expressed by causing seizures in nearby organisms and writing poems in the flesh of folks. Whatever's causing all this wants to express itself through poetry. Violent, transgenic poetry. Brush up on your literary devices and meet me in the library. Starting us off at number 5, we've got SCP-439. Who here is a fan of the worst torture imaginable? I don't know about you folks, but being immobilized and subjected to immeasurable pain is not exactly my cup of tea. No judgment, you know, everyone's got something, but stick with me and I'll introduce you to an SCP that will make your skin crawl like never before. Actually, I don't know if your skin could crawl after this one's done with you. SCP-439 is a grayish earwig that loves to crawl into the mouths of sleeping humans, all the way down into their lungs. If encountered while awake, it presents no more of a threat than a normal earwig. However, once this thing climbs down a sleeping person's trachea, it will settle in and subject you to a world of hurt. The first few hours after waking, the host will complain of chest pains and shortness of breath, followed by abdominal cramping. This tightness in their chest will worsen and a fever will rise until the host is incapacitated. At this point, the host will develop a disorder that's usually genetic and promotes additional bone growth into people's muscle tissue. This happens very rapidly and is extremely painful, often with bone spurs protruding through the host's flesh. The host will then seek shelter in a dark, enclosed space like a heating duct or a cupboard. In the first 3 days, without treatment, the host will become completely withdrawn and immobile due to pain and difficulty breathing. This is the final stage of the transformation on the host's journey to becoming a bone hive. Let that phrase sit with you for a moment. Bone hive. Okay. The host then enters the fetal position and their skeletal structure shifts until they are roughly spherical in shape, while new protrusions anchor them into place. Now unrecognizable, they've been converted into a sort of cage to protect their internal organs and the bustling new earwig colony within. The earwigs will preserve little bits of the brain and digestive tract to ensure that these organs still function, and they actually use the host's intestines to process materials into a nutritive slurry for the colony. The queen will produce between 20 and 30,000 offsprings as workers, drones, and warriors, just crawling around inside your bony body. Eventually a new queen will emerge and the colony will burst forth from the hive in search of a new host. And when I say burst, I mean they'll actually tear their way out. All but the queen will die over the next little while, and then the host will eventually starve to death. Yes, the host is actually still alive while all of this is happening. Experimentation suggests that they're actually still semi-conscious during the process as well, which a fate worse than death, to say the least. Filling out our number 4 slot, we've got SCP-3199. Colloquially referred to as eggheads, these are big, weird, bald chickens that could very well end the world if left unchecked. These giant humanoid fowl clock in at around 3 meters tall and weigh almost 800 kilograms when fully grown. They're thick. Just look at their SCP picture. They can run at speeds averaging 25 kilometers per hour, and upon contact with a human or animal subject, they will liquefy the internal organs and bone structure. This disgusting cadaver will then be brought and fed to the younger eggheads. Their reproductive cycle is what causes them to be so fearful, as there doesn't seem to be a limit to how many times these things can reproduce. They seem to do this asexually as well, meaning that they can just go on and on without, any other contact. So get this, any instance of 3199, fully grown or not, has an egg in them at all times. They will produce them often through a process in which the egg passes through the stomach, up the esophagus, and then it is vomited out of the mouth along with a viscous red corrosive substance. While this is happening, the chicken folk show extreme discomfort and emit sounds not dissimilar to screams. These large, rubbery off-white eggs are extremely resilient and have proven to be resistant to blunt force trauma, pressure in excess of 180,000 pounds per square inch, high precision blades, and long-term acid exposure. While it's easy enough to dispatch an egg head, the eggs themselves are hard to destroy. And the fact that they can reproduce at extreme rates means that this could easily represent an XK class scenario via overpopulation. Imagine living in a world where everywhere you look you see awful flabby chicken manticores vomiting eggs and acid. Although I wonder if the chickens fry up nice. That could be useful. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-4616. This one's kind of an odd one, even for an SCP. It's a humanoid entity with superhuman strength and speed, and it actively avoids and destroys any and all surveillance equipment, meaning that nobody has actually acquired any high-resolution images or video of it. Hangs around farmhouses with properties that include wooded areas. It'll chill out at the edge of the woods during the day and wave with its right hand at anyone present, but it'll retreat into the woods if approached. At night, it leaves the woods to inspect the farm. During these expeditions, 4616 will actually do useful farm work. It'll rearrange objects and sometimes damage property and livestock. It will also bang and scrape on the farmhouse trying to gain entry. Any farmhouse resident who's outdoors during the nocturnal excursion will be abducted by the beast. Never taking more than one person during any given night, it will then drag their victim into the woods. Anyone who attempts to leave the property will be abducted as well. In fact, if anyone other than the farm's residents attempt to enter the property, they'll be beaten to a literal pulp. Yes, reports have shown that victims of an attack end up as a semi-fluid pulp. Those are the words that are in the report. Imagine the noises that might make. Just if the farmhouse that it's monitoring becomes empty or otherwise defunct, it will move on to the nearest wooded farmland and begin again. For the longest time, abductees were never recovered from the woods once abducted. However, more recently a ring of 37 oak saplings appeared on the lawn of a Foundation-monitored farmhouse. At the base of each tree was what appeared to be a freshly dug grave, and inside was a well-preserved human body. Acorns had been implanted in the victims while they were still alive, and the tree was allowed to grow within them, developing a complex network of roots deep into their bodies. It's unclear as to how long the victims were alive with the trees growing within them. For now, the Foundation is staffing the current farmhouse with D-class personnel with agriculture experience, cycling new members in via hidden tunnel. They're expected to return to the farmhouse by sunset and remain indoors until sunrise. They've noticed that 4616 has become a little more aggressive though. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-1155. More cursed graffiti, called us street sweepers. 1155 manifests as a work of street art depicting the form of a humanoid owl creature. It has sinewy forelimbs, claw-like hands, and often tends towards a predatory stance with eyes that seem to follow the viewer, kind of like any given portrait in a haunted house. Anyone who sees this image is compelled to investigate more closely, and if they approach within 2 meters, they will be subjected to a violent attack. This attack generally takes around 6 seconds and involves lacerations, dismemberment of extremities, whole or partial removal of soft body parts, and penetrating head trauma consistent with those inflicted by a large beak or talons. These attacks will not occur if the victim remains in sight of another person, and if the sightline is re-established while the attack is underway, it will halt. This is not recommended though, because the victim will die regardless, whether through shock or blood loss. If the attack is allowed to conclude, both victim and painting will vanish. There is yet to be an instance of victim retrieval, but the painting itself will reappear somewhere within 7 days. Whenever discovered, the area surrounding the painting must be quarantined, as completely enclosing it causes the relocation process to happen quickly. If you attempt to destroy or paint over it, it will also relocate. The Foundation constantly observes 1155 from a remote location while doing their best to keep civilians away from danger. Has anyone seen Velvet Buzzsaw? And finally at number 1, we've got SCP-4666. For this last one, let's get into the Christmas spirit, hey folks. 4666 is a long-lived humanoid of unknown origin. It's over 2 meters tall and appears to be an extremely emaciated, naked man of European descent. Capable of instantaneous or near instantaneous teleportation to any location north of 40 degrees north latitude. The Foundation has no idea how to properly contain this one. Every year this SCP will become active for a period of 12 days between December 21st and January 2nd. This is known as a Weissnacht event. 4666 will appear at dwellings in 1 or more locations, always at family homes and isolated rural areas. The family must have at least 1 child under the age of 8, and that area must have snow cover that lasts the duration of the event. For the first 7 nights, children will report seeing it somewhere near the family dwelling, whether watching from across a field or at the edge of a nearby forest. They will also report waking up and seeing it watching them sleep through the window. Nights 8 through 11 will involve family members hearing footsteps coming from the roof or attic and an unpleasant odor permeating throughout the house. No cause will be found, making the parents suspect that they are being stalked or haunted. On the 12th day of Christmas, 466 gave to me 2 scenarios. The more common scenario involves all family members being killed, save for 1 young child who is then kidnapped. It will inflict incapacitating injuries to the family members while they sleep and then herd them into a single room where it kills them all ritualistically in front of each other. The kidnapped children are brought to an unknown location and forced to make toys. If they don't work hard enough, 4666 will kill them or hurt them very badly. The remains are then used to make more toys. Yikes. Lumbering in at number 5, we have SCP-3166. Have you ever looked at a famous mascot character and thought to yourself, wow, I would absolutely hate to run into that thing in the real world? Me too. I think I might have an aneurysm if I ever ran into a true-to-life Donald Duck. Why doesn't he wear pants? Well, SCP-3166 takes that fear and brings it to life. Deadly tomato-stained life. 3166 is a humanoid entity clocking in at over 2 meters tall. It will manifest whenever the Garfield franchise is doing poorly, whether that means in terms of sales or general public perception. The exterior of this creature resembles a crudely made Garfield costume, seemingly made of real cat fur. Don't ask where the fur came from. The interior, oddly enough, is full of lasagna. I know it sounds silly, but stick with me here, folks. This pasta stuffed cat suit is more dangerous than you'd think. If the Garfield franchise is doing poorly enough, 3166 will appear in the vicinity of a particular type of person and then move towards them. The folks likely to be targeted by this saucy abomination include people involved in media that rivals Garfield, former employees no longer working on Garfield, parody makers, vocal critics of the lazy cat, and Jim Davis himself. The crusty cat creature will attempt to inflict bodily harm upon these folks through blunt force trauma using nearby objects and by force feeding them lasagna. Where does this lasagna come from, you ask? Well, from inside the beast's body cavity. It self-disembowels and crams the cheesy layer cake down its victims' throats, cat hair and all the while meowing and screeching like an agitated feline. It seems to have first appeared along some weirdly nihilistic, very real Garfield comic strips from the 80s. You can read them online through the Garfield archives, if that tickles your fancy. Since then, the Foundation has been attempting to boost Garfield popularity in order to prevent it from becoming an issue. This is the perfect explanation behind Garfield Eats, the weird, otherworldly Garfield food ordering app that actually exists. Look that up, I'm serious. Also, the lasagna used to force feed folks has Jim Davis meat in it. Next SCP! Sliding its way into number 4, we have SCP-5404. Actually, I shouldn't have said that out loud. Whoops. Left out to ensure safe being is the proper safe classification. This entry is hard to parse. It's not very long, but the language employed is tricky. I'll explain it as best I can. There seems to be a shady organization out there looking to antagonize the Foundation. This operation is apparently making it so that words that the Foundation is likely to use become dangerous, or as stated in the article, boom boom words. That's boom hyphen boom. Don't mix it up unless you want to die. The amount of dangerous words seems to be growing too, with whoever's behind this becoming more effective. Certain words or letter clusters are unusable at this point. Thankfully, it's only when referring to the anomaly. For now. Some specific stuff you should never say while discussing 5404 includes do not talk, SCP-5404, talk, words. It's tough. It's hard to get around. There's a lot of linguistic tightrope walking going on. However, it's for the greater good. If this weird word warping group keeps it up, a whole lot more could become dangerous to say. And if word gets out, the whole world could go boom boom. So watch your phrasing. Coming in at number 3, SCP-1747. Graveyards are notoriously haunted, but not like this. 1747 is a collective designation for anomalous items recovered from one Hugo Edwards Memorial Cemetery in England. So the yard itself doesn't seem to be haunted, but instead some of the stuff within the limits. There are two main components to this SCP, 1747-1, a rusty shovel, and 1747-2, a corporeal humanoid. This shovel is a strange one indeed. By all accounts, it appears to be a normal digging implement. However, if you use it like a normal shovel, you'll always seem to hit something solid. Continue to dig and you'll find human remains below the earth no matter what was there before. The origin of these bodies is still a mystery. The humanoid is a tragic one indeed. It'll manifest in the graveyard for 40 minutes every night around 9 p.m. The female entity will grab the corpse shovel and proceed to dig up the graves of Scarlett and Amelia Edwards. Because it's using the cursed shovel, it will continuously dig up human bodies not belonging to either of the two graveholders. Thanks to this tricky bit of business, it has yet to reach the bodies it so diligently digs towards. There was one particular time that didn't line up with the rest of the digging and hauling though. On this night, the entity manifested and began digging as per usual. Then it suddenly ceased excavation, threw away the shovel, and showed signs of distress. Through EVP recording, researchers were able to hear the humanoid screaming out, "Hugo! Please, I want to see my children!" This went on for a while before it fell to its knees, kissed the tombstones, and walked away. Hasn't manifested since. So who is Hugo? And why won't he let her see your kids? Did he make the cadaver shovel? Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-4921. I'm not allowed to talk about 4921 for very long as per the instructions in the containment procedures. Speak too long and I'll damage myself and the SCP. Yikes. This is a cognitohazardous humanoid whose documentation carries the same infohazardous effects. In order to divert attention away from the object and documentation in question, individuals engaging with the material in any way, shape, or form will experience symptoms including distress, nausea, vertigo, hallucinations, stroke, and cardiac arrest. Thanks to this, 4921 was discovered when otherwise healthy people started hallucinating and having strokes. The humanoid herself is hurt whenever she's discussed. Anyone who knows about her will forcibly take up residence in her head. She describes this as crowding her senses, the horror of being known. 4921 often makes requests to limit this suffering, including that people read her document for shorter periods of time, pain medication, sleep medication, and fewer staff on her case, termination to be put into a medically induced coma, or for folks to stop reading the document altogether. Only some of these have been granted. Needless to say, if she were to make it out into the world at large, it would be bad for her and everyone who meets her. And lastly, at number 1, we've got SCP-5140. This is a bunch of frozen corpses on Mount Everest. We don't know how many, or where they all came from, or if they're from real people or not. At one point, it was estimated that they're between 1 and 200, but that doesn't necessarily hold up today. This shouldn't come as a huge surprise considering that many people have died attempting to scale Everest, and in fact most of the bodies of climbers are still there due to the difficulty of retrieving them. But the corpses involved in 5140 are different. Upsettingly different. First, they're ectoentropic. This means that when they're exposed to heat, they will absorb it without raising their own temperature. On a frozen mountain, this is bad news. Body heat is a major concern for mountain climbers, and the corpses in the mountain rest at around 10 degrees Celsius. Touch one and you'll be sapped of your heat down to that level, meaning that contact with these instances is usually fatal. Plus, if someone dies as a result of contact with a 5140 instance, they become one themselves, booby-trapping the mountainside further. It's like a minefield of creeping cold corpses. At one point, the Foundation sent a task force to investigate and do their best to bury the corpses. However, on this mission, recently buried corpses often exhumed themselves. This was initially thought to be the wind blowing loose snow off the bodies, but then strange things started happening. Shovels would get stuck and the team would run into folks that were recently buried. These wandering waifs would then grab non-instances and turn them into peoplesicles themselves. By the time the emergency rescue team made it out to the area from which a distress signal was sent out, there was nothing left to discover. No unburied corpses, no anomalous bodies, just the guy who had been sending the signals dead from exposure. Was he going mad, or was something sinister afoot? Well, remember that number I gave at the beginning, 100 to 200 corpses? Well, it was discovered after this mission that at least 45% of the mountain is made up of corpses. Kicking us off at number 5, we have SCP-2241. A superhero in the making, or maybe a supervillain. It's always the risk you run when gaslighting a child with reality-bending capabilities. 2241 is a 7-year-old boy originally with minor telekinetic ability and latent reality-bending abilities. The Foundation took him in and has maintained custody for his protection. Right. Well, that's the cover story. Really what they're doing is testing and developing his abilities to see if they can create more superheroes like him. At first, he could slightly move small objects across the room and he might accidentally change something into another thing every once in a while. But through hard work, determination, and a whole lot of insidious lying on the Foundation's part, he's really grown. By convincing him they're a sort of Avengers type organization, the Foundation has got the young lad destroying drones, dispatching D-class disguised as bad guys, and tossing mortars at the speed of sound. Not exactly the kind of stuff you want an emotionally unstable 7-year-old doing. He's been put through many tests, most of which are scenarios meant to upset him and place him in danger. Multiple times the ethics committee has put a stop to this testing, because he's a young dangerous child, but O5 has rescinded this every time, claiming the research is too valuable to let slide. Currently, he has a monitoring device implanted in him, which to me reads like kill switch if things get spooky. They've claimed that his loyalty is reason enough to consider the risk of containment breach low, but that smacks of stupidity and hubris to me. This whole thing just seems like Brightburn waiting to happen. If this kid throws a temper tantrum and flies off to the nearest town, I highly doubt there'll be much of a town left afterwards. Coming in at number 4, SCP-2200. Cursed Sword! Bad Cursed Sword! 2200 is a collective designation for a few interrelated things. First, there's a sword. An ancient sword that defies aging by killing people and sending them to its silver paradise. It finds a host, attaches itself to them, and refuses to be let go. If it is indeed removed from the host's grasp, the host will die. When the host dies, the sword will anomalously relocate to the hand of another individual and bond with them. Doesn't seem to be a limit to the distance it will travel, and the sword seems to selectively bond with folks. If you're between the ages of 15 and 45, physically active, have a strong fear of death, and tend to be psychologically and emotionally unstable, you are a top-notch candidate. Folks who come across the sword generally act pretty irresponsibly based on these traits. One subject went around killing homeless people with it and considered it a benevolent act. He explained that they were probably close to death anyways, and this was a perfect way to ensure that they avoided hell. Another subject killed her own family in order to make sure they lived forever. If you're killed by the sword, a likeness of you will appear within a designated area of about 50 kilometers squared. This likeness will be made of silver-based alloy, fully inorganic but animate and capable of vocalization. It will even share memories and personality traits with the victim it resembles. No more aging, no more injuries, no need to eat, sleep, or drink. Honestly, it just sounds like limbo. Just chill here forever and ever and ever, and you can't leave. Instances can choose to exit the area actually, but if they do, they cease to be animate, and nobody's really sure what happens to them after that. Some of these silvery, statuesque people see it as an opportunity to make your peace before dying for real. Others see it as a sort of purgatory. But really, it's a holding cell for the sword's elixir of life. Coming in at number 3, SCP-662. Honestly, this is only as dangerous as the person holding it, but considering people, it's pretty dangerous. It's a silver bell with no ringer. If shaken as if to ring it, a faint chime will be heard and a well-dressed British butler named Mr. Deeds will show up. He'll address the ringer by name and title and ask what they desire. Most reasonable requests given to Mr. Deeds will be satisfied. However, there are limits to what he can do. He can't produce super complex items like luxury cars, huge homes, or aircraft, but if he's allowed to leave line of sight, he can produce smaller, less complicated items like sandwiches, ice iced tea, caviar, and even bricks of gold. The jolly good chap will also perform menial tasks with high degree of efficiency, like washing cars, making food, or cleaning in general. If he considers anything impossible, he will politely let the ringer know and even suggest alternatives. How cordial. Durable too. If you injure or kill Mr. Deeds, which is about as difficult as killing or injuring a short posh butler, he'll reappear, uninjured and ready to go upon the next ringing. Now this all seems well and good, right? Well, doesn't seem like Mr. Deeds has any qualms with murder. If someone were to ring the bell and request swift death upon their enemies, the butler would in all likelihood oblige. Some kills, like deeply entrenched military leaders, are too difficult, but most public figures and citizens are fair game. Plus, I bet he'd be able to go behind the scenes and cause plenty of mayhem. Mr. Deeds, can you acquire the nuclear codes? Hey Mr. Deeds, deliver a letter declaring war. Mr. Deeds, leak those photos. You know the ones. Good help is hard to find and super dangerous. Coming in at number 2, we have SCP-1678. Victorian era London is freaky, right? Jack the Ripper, werewolves, unexplainable diseases tearing through town. Oh, maybe I'm just thinking of Bloodborne. Regardless, a dimly lit, anomaly-filled London doesn't seem like the place you'd want to be, right? If that's the case, you're gonna want to avoid Un-London. Exactly 1 kilometer below the real London is a mirror image city resembling the population center during the Victorian era. Gas lighting, cobblestones, old architecture, etc. Researchers believe that it was constructed instantaneously by unknown means with the Houses of Parliament as the epicenter. The further you get from these, the stranger the city becomes. Houses begin being made of copper pipes, doors and windows disappears, street lights are nothing more than poles with floating orbs at the top. A recorded message plays when one enters the city, basically confirming that it's meant to be a refuge for survivors of an XK class end of world event. The buildings seem to be outfitted for dense inhabitation and the food supply is appropriate for a fallout shelter. The city itself is spooky but not exactly dangerous. These strange entities roaming the streets are another story though. So far, 2 types of humanoid anomalies have been discovered, with bird-like surveillance drones flitting about for good measure. The first is known as a wretch. Imagine a witch from Left 4 Dead without the insta-kill abilities. They lay about in rags, weeping and begging for food. If you provide them with some of the local nutrient paste, they'll literally disintegrate into ash. The other humanoid is more dangerous. It's known as a bobby. Victorian era policemen assembled from dismembered human parts and industrial hinges. They're hostile to anyone they come across, attacking on sight with improvised weapons. Highly resistant to damage, these coppers can only be dispatched using high caliber rounds and explosive weapons. I don't know exactly what's going on down there, but I would like it to stay underground. We've got enough issues up here. And finally at number 1, SCP-3179. A sentient liquid metal with shape-shifting and drone spawning capabilities, hell-bent on escape come hell or high water? Yeah, that's something we don't want out in the streets. Currently, 3179 is being held at a containment unit designed by the Cogwork Orthodoxy over 100 years ago, but it doesn't look like this will hold up much longer. Once it breaks, who knows how long we'll contain this thing. 3179 spends most of its time attempting to break containment. It will expand and change shape and even create autonomous anomalous entities to assist in its quest. While the main body of metal usually looks like metal, the pieces it breaks off can actually take all sorts of forms. In fact, through what appears to be trial and error, 3179 has successfully created automatons that perfectly imitate mobile task force members and use them to infiltrate the Foundation. Many times, MTF personnel have been found tampering with the containment unit for no apparent reason, only to be discovered as pieces of the metallic blob. During its many escape endeavors, it has killed, maimed, and otherwise generally trampled all over the people nearby. Attempting to grow legs on its underside, forming propellers on its top side, imitating voices of Foundation personnel to lure folks away, it's done it all. Followers of Mekane the Broken God consider this thing to be the offspring of their deity and attempted to prove this. This seems to have inspired 3179 to believe that it's a god, or at least taught it that people will worship it if it acts as one. So now 3179 creates tablets equating itself to Mekane and demands to be worshipped. Somehow I don't believe that this is the benevolent being the Church of the Broken God prays to. Number 5. SCP-2872. This SCP is usually an exceptional racehorse of excellent size and speed. Its record in the Kentucky Derby stands at 2 minutes 1 second, and it doesn't noticeably age. That aging thing aside, it doesn't usually exhibit any anomalous behavior. It just looks and acts like a regular racehorse. However, it must win the Kentucky Derby once every 5 years. If it does not find itself draped in roses within 5 years of winning its previous derby, it will become restless and start to run in large loops. Within 2 days, it'll be continuously running, getting faster and faster and faster until it's able to demolish any wall or fence in its way. Somehow, it is never physically harmed by any of these impacts while in this state. If it's left unimpeded, it will reach a top velocity of approximately 320 meters per second and will continuously run in loops across distances measuring hundreds of kilometers. This does not mean that it's unstoppable, however. If it hears the words, "Whoa boy," it will stop over a period of 50 meters. However, the sound must be adjusted to take into account the Doppler effect before it will have the desired effect. The horse was discovered at some point in the 60s when it caused over $30 million in damages. It was calmed down successfully by the owner at the time, and custody of SCP-2872 was transferred to the Foundation. The owner explained the 5-year principle and promptly skedaddled. He hasn't been seen since. Since then, the horse has hit what was assumed to be a top speed twice. However, the Foundation found a private stable and trainer who seemed to be adept at keeping the horse sedate and winning derbies. At some point in the 2010s though, it began to show agitation again. Tranquilizers were ineffective and even the failsafe, whoa boy, did not work. SCP-2872 erupted from his cell, causing injuries and fatalities and ran off into the wastelands. At some point, it achieved escape velocity and achieved liftoff. Yes, you heard me right. The horse ran so fast, defied gravity, right out into the solar system, out of our atmosphere and off into space. At this time, it is 10 light years away from our solar system and appears to have lost forward momentum. Current analysis suggests that it's turning back. Uh-oh. When I said it can never escape, I actually meant it can never escape the cold, dark nothingness of outer space, but apparently it's just that fast. I don't think Earth is ready for that kind of impact. Coming in at number 4, SCP-1498. You might want to reconsider counting sheep before falling asleep after I tell you about this one. SCP-1498 is a collection of 30 autonomous bundles of phone cords and handsets assembled in such a way that they resemble sheep. These twirly corded creatures constantly wander around their containment chambers, ringing away every once in a while. If someone answers the phone or attempts to use the handset, they will hear 3 rings followed by a voice identifying themselves as an operator of the One Eye Roy Collective. The operator will instruct the subject on various dreaming options and make suggestions for enhanced dreaming experiences. Once the call is ended, the subject will lose consciousness for 9 hours. That's more sleep than I've had all year, lucky bastard. When they awake, the subject will claim to have experienced the exact dream they ordered. They will likely want to reuse the phone immediately. If someone uses this service repeatedly, the experience changes their bodily and mental state, and not for the better. They will want to sleep as often as possible and prefer to use the SCP to select their dreams. While they're sawing logs, parts of their skull will begin to be replaced by telephone parts. Sometimes this manifests through the coughing up of telephones, cords extending into their esophagus, wires growing in place of their hair, ringing devices being found in their ears, and their voices actually being replaced with dial tones. Doesn't sound like too much fun if you ask me. Imagine if these sheep were just out in the world, luring people in with a cure for insomnia and then replacing their body parts with phone pieces. I'm sure some folks would even do it voluntarily, knowing the risks. Eventually, a whole rotary phone will assemble itself on the subject's head, and then they will display the same intelligence as instances of SCP-1498. There have been no cases of human intelligence being restored in such cases. Hope the dreams were worth it. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-4276. These next couple entries are particularly nasty insects who could very well be indistinguishable from their regularly occurring counterparts. Fair warning, you may never want to leave the house again. SCP-4276 is a tribe of insects similar to what is commonly known as the cuckoo wasp. They have many similarities, including kleptoparasitic breeding habits and structural coloration. However, this SCP can manifest in many more colors and has been known to grow larger than the non-anomalous variety. Its behavior is hard to distinguish from the average cuckoo wasp, save for an ability to grow to maturity much faster. Instead of hosting its larvae in eggs, SCP-4276 will introduce the baby bugs to both living and freshly killed animals. Yeesh. Recorded instances of this behavior have been found in 4 white-tailed deer, 2 desert cottontails, 1 red fox, 1 black bear, 1 German shepherd, and Get this, 4 human males. Yup, those nasty will burrow into living humans. Is anyone else feeling itchy? The colony was originally discovered at the cottage of a hunter where wasps had infested the lodgings and burrowed into a man and 3 guests. Once they're ready to hatch, they burst forth from the flesh, leaving small holes all throughout the host. The colony was controlled with smoke and brought under the Foundation's custody, thank goodness. While researching the behavior of these horrifying insects, it was discovered that hatching and maturation can be accelerated through the use of noises exceeding 90 decibels or irregular or extreme illumination, sometimes a combination of both. This became all the more horrifying when another instance was introduced at the local high school's prom. Loud music, flashing lights, you do the math. Foundation account details a student being so full of these rapidly growing wasps that he exploded. It's like becoming a human hive. Now we know there's more than one colony, and they may not all be under Foundation custody. Excuse me as I go douse myself in gasoline. Coming in at number 2, SCP-775. If that last one gave you the heebie-jeebies, prepare yourself, because this one isn't any better. 775 is a variety of tick, significantly larger than most regular ticks. Most unengorged adults end up being around the size of a nickel. And if you've ever seen a normal tick, you should know that no tick should be that big. None of them. In addition to being huge, these ticks are resistant to crushing, cutting, and tearing, so anything you could do to kill a normal one won't be so effective here. Plus, they move fast. They're also capable of flattening themselves down to 25 millimeters to escape during tiny gaps and actually damaging concrete over time. These abilities would make any tiny bloodsucker extra awful, but just you wait, it gets way worse. Blood isn't the only thing on the menu, as these ticks inject an enzyme that liquefies other tissues. Bone, blood vessels, fats, all food for these buggers. The thing that they don't target is actually skin tissue. Once engorged with all of the host's gooey insides, it will lay an egg sac and resume feeding. And in fact, it will not stop feeding until the host is totally incapable of providing further nutrients. That means the hosts will be just hollowed out, leaving behind the outer layers of skin. Just imagine a totally deflated, like, human balloon, and you'll start to get the picture. But the skin doesn't just get left alone, the ticks will actually get to work laying more eggs. And this loose skin will eventually be totally filled to the brim with eggs, taking on bloated and misshapen forms. Eventually, the ticks will fill these nests beyond capacity and they will burst like a greasy zit. The accelerated life cycle of these nasties mean that they can constantly undergo population explosions. If left unchecked, they could potentially decimate populations within weeks. Bleach seems to be the only way of effectively killing them, and that's only when they're submerged for more than 5 minutes. The Foundation really has their hands full containing these ones. And lastly, number 1, SCP-2316. Before you continue watching, please confirm that you do not recognize the bodies in the water. It is extremely important that you do not recognize the bodies in the water. This SCP is a cognitohazard, meaning that just knowing details about it can cause you to fall under its effect. Even though its escape is not likely to ever happen, knowledge most definitely will be shared at some point, like right now, and this compounds the danger. It manifests as a group of human corpses floating at the surface of the water in a lake. The lake has been quarantined and fenced off and is constantly patrolled by guards with no knowledge of this SCP. The identities of the bodies cannot be shared due to the risk of cognitive damage, and the DNA tests have proven inconclusive. Remember, you do not recognize the bodies in the water. While they do appear as individual instances, it is theorized that the bodies may actually be an entity comprised of a collective consciousness. Those who have viewed it or are aware of its nature believe that the individual instances are human beings that they recognize, typically from their childhood. Attempting to come in contact with these instances will cause other bodies to appear. Additional instances serve to reinforce and add to the strength of the cognitohazard, which compels affected individuals into the water. Individuals who enter the lake this way are lost, and none of them have ever been recovered. No, they are not just going for a swim. One last time, you do not recognize the bodies in the water. Or do you? Coming in at number 5, SCP-4885. Does anyone remember getting those search and find style picture books when you were a kid? I had a whole stack of I Spy books, which may have been a factor in my eventual horror obsession. There's some creepy little details to find in there, left you feeling all spooky. Especially if you took the I Spy love one step further and played the mystery PC games. There were other options for this kind of activity book, of course, but none were as famous or iconic as Where's Waldo. Depending on where you're from, he might be known as Wally or Willie or Walter or Charlie, but we all know who he is based on his big red striped shirt and hat, and his round glasses, right? Where I Spy was sometimes creepy through the use of odds and ends in their photography, Waldo was always good, wholesome fun for the whole family. Cartoony fun all around the world. Well, SCP-4885 might ruin that for you. This creature is an anomalous humanoid resembling the hidden hero himself. The only real difference is that 4885 has paler skin and no eyes. Uh-oh. If someone learns of its current location at any given time, it will phase into the nearest wall. Then our Nega Wally will proceed to appear inside the subject and reach up through their esophagus, grab their chin from inside their mouth, and pull themselves out of the body. This destroys the internal organs and spine. Their husk of a body then burbles a yellow liquid through their mouth, covering their body entirely. Then they become an instance of 4885-1, an anomalous corpse covered in illustrations similar to those found in Where's Waldo books. At the time of writing, no Waldos have been found in these illustrations. After killing the location knower, evil Waldo will stay in that area, patrolling until he's discovered once again. This makes all those ironic Where's Waldo Halloween costumes from a few years back seem a little more malicious, doesn't it? Coming in at number 4, SCP-1742. Clean freaks, get ready for your skin to crawl. This is an instance of anomalous filth. 1742 is a contagious phenomenon taking the form of household grime. Soil, grease, feces, all the stuff you would never want in your home. While it's not in a domicile of some sort, only direct contact will provide avenue for transfer. If something touches the filth, it'll stain or mark the object as you would expect standard grade mess to do. However, the affected area will grow rapidly until the entire object is covered. The filth adapts too, becoming rust when it's on metal objects or food waste when it's infecting eating utensils. You can clean it from your skin and hair with some high-grade detergents, but there is no way to remove it from inanimate objects. Attempts at cleaning it will only spread it further. Your sponges, towels, dishwashers, and Swiffer wet jets are all gonna get infected. Yuck. If 1742 finds its way into a house or home, the instances will spread with additional tenacity. Once per day, a new instance will spontaneously show up as a marker stain on the walls, floor, or furniture, and once more than half of the surfaces in a home are covered, bigger pieces of waste will appear. This could be food waste, empty packages, dirty clothes, animal waste, hair, or even dead pests. Imagine the worst possible place to live. That's what 1742 strives for. It's like a frat house plus crack house in every house. Oof. Coming in at number 3, we have SCP-4319. This one just scares me. It's too powerful. It's a blog called Just Girly Things, and it has the power to anomalously change things to be girlier. Once you visit, all of your browser and phone themes will be changed to one approved by the webmasters over at JGT. Girly clothes will anomalously appear on your body. Even the environment around the device the blog was accessed on will change. And it's not just an aesthetic change either. It makes people who access it become violently obsessed with traditional femininity. Anyone who doesn't embrace the same values will be assimilated or eliminated. No sports, no short hair, no masculine traits, nothing. And it all changes in the blink of an eye. The folks behind the scenes want everyone to enjoy the same girly things they do. It was originally a magazine that got discovered by Jess Landins. Landins somehow even made the entry in the SCP Wiki conform to the pink and frilly theme. This literally has the ability to alter baseline reality surrounding it. So who knows what happens if it spreads too far. Right now the Foundation has managed to restrict access to the actual blog proper, but it seems to be radiating influence just fine regardless. But hey, if you're a sucker for BuzzFeed quizzes, you can take the JGT quiz and find out what kind of girly girl you are. Apparently it's weirdly accurate. Coming in at number 2, we have SCP-811. Admittedly, this is a fan favorite, and a lot of people see her as a harmless hero protagonist, but I do have to say that she'd be terrifying to run into outside of containment. This feral child turned swamp woman was discovered by the Foundation personnel way back when. She's green with long oily hair and some weirdly lengthy limbs. Her grasp on the English language is tentative at best, kind of like that of a child with very little human contact from a young age. A green tinged mucus is secreted from her body and causes organic matter to rapidly decompose into a viscous black liquid. This dark goop is food for Swamp Lady, who absorbs it directly into her bloodstream. Once processed, this turns into a tar-like substance in her stomach, which can be weaponized. It's often projectile vomited at prey, aimed at their face or any perceived open wounds. If it hits, it's a waiting game. Prey usually dies from asphyxiation or aggressive bacterial infection. Both are bad ways to go. Now that the Foundation's had time to study the effects of this stuff, you're likely safe if attacked. Get on an antibiotic regimen within 3 hours and you'll probably survive, but if not, you're pooched. People exposed for more than 12 hours are actually given permission to request immediate termination. It must be pretty painful. 811 is mostly friendly and amiable, but has a bit of a dark backstory. After having her hair washed and brushed by various Foundation members and getting chronic tooth pain looked after, 811 requested that she be addressed by a 2-syllable name, Ah-eh. She's managed to communicate that she remembers being human once, and being injected with something that made her vomit up tons of blood and some of her organs. This caused her to be monstrously hungry and literally eat a person. Since then, she's been breaking down and eating all sorts of creatures in the swamp. She's happily in containment now, making the odd request for a turtle companion. Though if she does get spooked and breaks containment, a lot of folks might end up as sludge. And lastly at number 1, SCP-1903. Poor Jackie. Once an escort at some sort of gentleman's club, exposure to a chemical plant worker turned her into an info-hazardous rabid monster. Sheesh. Since being discovered by the Foundation, 1903 has undergone a gradual transformation from a human with pigmented hands and a floppy face to an infectious one-eyed mercury-producing fiend. Information regarding this SCP is a conditional info hazard. If someone learns of the chemical worker's name, his actions towards Jackie, and the nature of his commissions prior to containment, then they will experience symptoms similar to Jackie's. Mercury poisoning, face skin flaking away, and a papier-mâché style mask growing from their head. Not totally pleasant. The mask will then take the form of a random animal, and their hearing will be transferred to the nearest pair of novelty animal ears. In addition to all these grotesque transformations, subjects affected by 1903 report very specific hallucinations in which everyone around them is wearing a white tuxedo or dress and animal masks. A surreal vision of a masquerade. These folks tend to be reluctant to discuss any information relevant to their state as they don't want the infection spreading further. In fact, Jackie herself tried to warn the doctor presiding over her case file away from reading the case file. Too late though, as the doctor then underwent the transformation as well. If the Foundation isn't careful, we could have a lot more mercury spewing, blood dripping animal people running around. There's a whole lot packed into this entry, and the author claims to have hidden 12 things for you to find. Go in thinking about Norse mythology and World War II fetishism and let me know what you find in the comments. Coming in at number 5, we've got SCP-939. We're gonna start off with a doozy, because this SCP is best described as a big, ugly, red, bloody, unhinged jaw fish cave thing with memory loss powers. That's a mouthful, I know, but it's all true. And the last thing you want is for it to get a mouthful of you. Multiple iterations of this lovely cave dweller exist, and they are capable of bearing young, so they can multiply. How nice. 939 is an endothermic pack-based predator adapted to cave life. Its skin is highly permeable to moisture and is a translucent red color thanks to a chemical compound similar to hemoglobin. Kinda like a living blood sausage if you're into that kind of thing. I've heard they're quite delicious, but now I'm thinking about food instead of SCPs. These weird red troglobites are about 2.2 meters tall and weigh around 250 kilograms. They have 4 limbs, each ending with 3 claws and an opposable 4th digit. 939's extremities are covered in short, bristly hair-like structures which are great for climbing. Each has an elongated skull with no eyes or eye sockets, not even a brain casing to be found. But their jaws are lined with red, luminescent fang-like teeth, kind of like a viper fish. That's an ugly sucker right there. Along their dorsal ridges run eye spots and spiny protrusions that are sensitive to light and air pressure respectively. They are likely used to navigate the caves they seem so adapted to and seek out prey. The weird thing about their prey-seeking tendencies though is that they have no apparent need to feed. These hemoglobin hobgoblins are without vital organ systems. No central or peripheral nervous systems, no circulatory systems, no digestive tract. So they have no way of digesting the tissue that they consume, and instead they let it accumulate in their respiratory system till there's too much and then they regurgitate it. Nothing sexier than regurgitating festering meat from your lungs, right? SCP-939 is able to imitate human speech as well, an ability that it uses primarily to lure in victims. It will pretend to be distressed with voices so perfectly imitated biometric voice recognition systems can't tell it apart from whatever it's mimicking. When prey is close enough, it will kill with a single bite to the cranium or neck, usually measured in excess of 35 megapascals. Sometimes I think it would be nice to have my head placed in a hydraulic press, you know? On top of all these these horrifying details, 939 also produces an aerosolized Class C amnestics of its own accord. No memories will form for the duration of exposure and for an additional 30 minutes after. Terrifying visage, the ability to play copycat, a skull-crushing bite, and memory inhibition. Let's just say you wouldn't want to meet one of these guys while out spelunking. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-1313. I always thought math was pretty scary on its own. Through my schooling, I found solace in English, philosophy, media studies, but never math. My brain just isn't wired for that kind of thought. Thankfully so, too. I could have been in grave danger had I been too keen on algebra and arithmetic. SCP-1313 is an anomalous series of logical processes capable of being defined as a mathematical equation to which the answer is a single female specimen of Ursus arctos, aka a grizzly bear. I think the proper designation for a grizzly bear is Ursus arctos horribilis, but we'll leave that be for now. In layman's terms, what this means is if you reach the correct answer to the mathematical equation that SCP-1313 represents, a grizzly bear will manifest somewhere close by and start to do what grizzly bears do. Not something you want to deal with in homeroom. The numerical anomaly first came to the Foundation's attention in 1967 when a bear attack was recorded at White Cross High School. Since then, over 1,700 separate incidences of bear attacks in educational institutes has been observed, with over 1,600 fatalities and 20% of the bears still at large. Half solving the problem won't summon any predatory mammals, and there is no way to return the bear to numerical form by solving the inverse. So if you're gonna follow through with this piece of math homework, just be sure you're well equipped to fight a 200-kilogram mama bear. And if you feel that you've personally begun to figure out this equation, get yourself some amnestics as soon as possible. The problem doesn't need to be physically represented. Even solving it in your head will result in the manifestation of a bear. I always knew math was unbearable. I'll see myself out. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-638. Wine and meat. That's the good life, right? Cures what ails you, heals all wounds. Well, if you were to believe SCP-638, then that would be the case. 638 is a male human with a slim build. He's hairless and extensively scarred thanks to a fire that he was found in the remains of. It heals at an abnormal rate, directly proportional to the consumption of raw flesh and wine. Often, 638 will issue demands in the form of 1 or 2 word shouts. In the past, the demands have been things like wine, ivy, olive trees, grass for the floor, freedom, women, live animals, a drum, a flute, and a view of the sky. Apparently this guy knows how to live the good life. If these demands are not met, he will become violent and exhibit short bursts of great strength and speed. He's been known to dent steel, easily lift and throw grown men, break restraints, and shout with great force and volume. These shouts can shatter glass and deafen people, even blowing a steel door off its hinges at one point. Fortunately, these outbursts lead to lethargy if he's left without food and wine, so starvation's a pretty effective behavioral control. This SCP, while obviously physically anomalous, has one ability that stands out above the rest. 683 has a strong psychic or empathic influence over women within a radius of about 20 meters. Any woman within that range will be compelled to be in its presence, and once there will lose all inhibition. This often manifests through intense dancing, jumping, and shouting. If they're allowed to continue on, they will dance until they drop from exhaustion. Attempts to remove female subjects result in violent responses from both 638 and affected subjects. This SCP will use these folks in aid to escape, as subjects will also demonstrate greater physical prowess along with a higher level of adrenaline. Once removed from his influence, subjects demonstrate full memory of their actions and often feel intense shame if it's not something they would have otherwise done. The jury is still out on how the influence works, whether psychic or empathic, but could be something else entirely. In the meantime, hide your kids, hide your wife, because he's influencing everyone out there. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-076. I like to think of this one as being like a Terminator without the influence of Skynet. Less metal parts too, I guess. 076 is actually classified as 2 things, a stone cube and the humanoid entity contained within. The cube is covered in engraved patterns with no known origin, with 21 locks on the door. Inside is a human male estimated to be in his late 20s. He's got black hair, gray eyes, and olive skin. All over his body are tattoos depicting arcane and occult imagery. He's commonly referred to as Abel, and for simplicity's sake, I'll refer to him as such. Abel is technically dead while encased in the stone cube. Every once in a while, he will awaken awaken and reanimate with all human vital signs. He'll then seek out the nearest human and enter a rage state in which all humans encountered are fought to the death. The only way to end this rampage is by killing Abel. This proves to be very difficult though, as he possesses superhuman physical abilities and is able to ignore pain and shock. He's been seen carrying on through seemingly deadly injuries, ripping through reinforced security doors, clearing 64 meters in under 3 seconds, taking multiple 50 cal rounds to the head and continuing to fight, swatting lower cal bullets out of the air with rebar, surviving without oxygen for more than an hour, and materializing bladed weapons out of nowhere. Is my Terminator comparison making more sense? Even when he dies, he'll turn to dust and then reform in the coffin over a period of time between 6 hours and 25 years. The lad has nothing but contempt for human beings and will fight tooth and nail to keep killing. There's a weird connection between SCP-076 and 073, and under no circumstances should they be allowed to meet. Here's hoping they keep a close eye on this one, because I'm not down to die gloriously in combat against a superhuman. Not yet, anyways. And finally, number 1, SCP-2440. I am pretty sure that I've already fallen under the influence of this one. Yep. Even before I tell you more, it's likely that you have too. Anyone into SCPs has a higher chance than most to sustain 2440 infection. Let me explain why. This SCP is an extra-dimensional entity whose power increases proportional to the number of people aware of it. Using a memetic agent that can be inserted into any source of information, this SCP can control the actions of the infected to some degree. Once it reaches a certain level of awareness, it can extend its influence past infected individuals. I'll run down the scale that it seemingly works by. At fewer than 200 infected, the individuals influenced will demonstrate a heightened interest in horror, fantasy, and sci-fi media. They'll express interest in writing and sharing these works, which increases the infection rate. See where I'm going with this? You've probably already stumbled across some of the memetic agent already. Meme warfare people with horror, sci-fi, and fantasy at the core. Once it amasses over 500 people, it can overtake the body of an infected individual and speak to all infected individuals at the same time. On its journey to 10,000, it gains reality-bending characteristics and becomes capable of manifesting itself outside of a host for short periods of time. Currently, the Foundation believes this SCP to have amassed over 10,000 people, meaning that it can control up to 1,000 individuals at one time. If it keeps up the exponential spread of the memetic agent, it could control a projected 1 million people. This would lead to an XK class scenario, as the anomaly would be fully capable of manifesting itself outside of a host. We'd all be subject to its powers, and humanity would fall totally under its control. The Foundation is currently administrating anti-memetics and amnestics to all found to be connected to this, but it is tough to contain the spread of information. The internet tends to be resistant to censorship after all. An organization known as the Children of God worship 2440 and spread its materials as often as possible. So yeah, I don't know how long we have before this one eclipses the Foundation. Maybe there's Foundation materials already infected by the memetic. In that case, enjoy what time you have left and prepare to bask in the glory of 2440, our meme god. Seems about right in 2019. Kicking us off at number 5, we've got SCP-309. If you thought stuffed animals were creepy before, just wait until you get a look at this. It'll make your skin crawl. Or do something much worse. Much, much worse. 309 is a small, plush stuffed animal that looks like it's been turned inside out. Seams and stitches on full display. The cuddly toy is understuffed, making it very flexible and floppy. It doesn't do too much other than sit there. It just appears to be a normal, if not externally confused, children's toy. It has no effect on inanimate objects, but contact with living subjects is highly dangerous, if not life-threatening. Yeah, this cozy, squishy guy should be absolutely under no circumstances be cuddled and or squoze. If a human or animal lightly brush the toy with a finger or other small digit, they will feel extremely uncomfortable for about 10 minutes. Subjects have reported extreme nausea, although vomiting is never induced. The unpleasant feelings are so extreme that most have not been able to maintain voluntary contact for more than a few seconds. But that is just the shallow end of this horrific swimming pool. If 309 is pressed firmly up against someone, or a subject tries to pick it up and hold it, that individual will be violently and painfully turned inside out. You can be just like Bun Bun here. Twins! The skeleton will remain unaltered, but all these soft tissues that should be beneath the lovely protective layer of skin will be resituated to the exterior of the body. Want to know the best part? Or the worst? It's not immediately fatal. Just really, really painful. Oh, and also it's irreversible, so if you do survive, good luck living in a bubble with all of your tendons exposed. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-1123. Speaking of body parts that should remain under a layer of skin, let's discuss a cursed skull. 1123 is a human skull missing the lower mandible and all of its teeth. On the forehead is a message written in human blood. This message translates to remember. If you're further than 5 meters away from the skull or are looking at it through a photo, this message will not be visible. As you get closer though, it appears to be more legible and fresher until it looks wet. Around 1 meter, you'll start to notice other anomalous sensory phenomena like the smells of cooking or ashes, sounds like soft crying or distant footsteps, and even tactile responses like grit in your eyes or glass splinters in the sole of your foot. None too pleasant. Upon touching the skull, subjects will enter a dissociative fugue state that lasts anywhere between 90 minutes to 6 hours. During this time, they'll experience confusion, disorientation, and an adoption of a new identity and memories. Knowledge and language previously unknown to the subject will be acquired, and they'll often either have a state of total catatonia or end up attacking someone nearby. Once the state ends, the subject will return to their previous state with memories of the knowledge they gained. Some say it's as if they lived a whole other life as someone else. These imprinted personalities share a lot of similarities, like being a victim of subjugation, torture, or imprisonment, dying by violence, and their death being a result of targeting by a political mass movement. Some examples of past personalities are that of an Armenian farmer who was burned alive by the Ottoman army, a Ukrainian girl beaten to death by members of the Soviet brigade, and an Iraqi victim of a mustard gas attack. As such, people who have touched the skull often share psychological effects common to the type of trauma experienced by the imprinted personality, like grief, survivor's guilt, and depression. No other anomalous effects have been reported though. Swooping in at number 3, we've got SCP-3001. While not exactly a monster, the effects of this SCP are quite monstrous indeed. It's a to explain too. 3001 is a hypothesized paradoxical, parallel/pocketed, non-dimension accessible through the creation of a momentary Class C broken entry wormhole. It's believed to be infinitely expanding and almost completely devoid of matter. A low Hume level causes the matter inside to decay extremely slowly, with simulations suggesting over 70% of an organism can disappear before function is impeded. I'd rather keep 70% of myself, but hey, if it keeps me alive. Way back when, Dr. Robert Scranton and his wife Dr. Anna Lang were testing some reality-bending technology, resulting in Scranton being transported into 3001. He was presumed dead for a while until he managed to get a panel chronicling his experiences transported back to the Foundation. This is how most information about 3001 was discovered. Apparently, he's been surviving in 3001 for over 5 years, with his mental and physical state constantly deteriorating. Now, the SCP itself is quite scary, seeing as nobody wants to be transported into a pocket dimension where nothing makes sense, there's no chance of escape. But even scarier are the theories that postulate that 3001 is the origin of the ever-prevalent SCP-106. The black corrosive gel filling all sorts of spaces in Scranton's log lent legitimacy to this idea. Imagine if other folks gained access to 3001 and became a creature like 106 and then started requiring femur-breaking sacrifices. One terrifying old man is enough, don't you think? Floating in at number 2, we've got SCP-5031. This is a perfect example of why you should always try to treat things with compassion, even if they are dangerous. If researcher Huxtable didn't attempt to make a connection with this SCP, it may well have sliced and diced people to its heart's content. Or maybe it was super risky to attempt connection at all. Who knows? Back to the SCP itself, 5031 is a humanoid of unknown origin. It was originally believed to be non-sapient, but this theory was soon disproven. However, the idea that it will temporarily cease to exist when viewed, that one stayed true. Photos and video don't capture it either, but traces of its existence like blood trails or scratch marks will remain even when it disappears. Viewing its shadow doesn't cause it to cease existing either, and its appearance has been deduced through viewing it this way. 5031 has a small head, no discernible neck, and arms that branch out into 3 limbs at each elbow. It levitates about half a meter off the ground and has a blade-like lower edge. Although it has no nutritional needs, 5031 will hunt and consume any organism it encounters. This all changed though when senior researcher Stanley Huxtable came onto the scene. He saw the containment procedures as cruel and unusual and decided to figure out a way to have 5031 live a less stressful life. Through conducting experiments, he discovered that music and play reduced stress levels. Eventually, he also found out that 5031 liked rotisserie chicken and was able to differentiate between images, making correlations between those images and rewards. Over time, it even learned language and made requests for certain types of food. It even became adept at cooking and verbalized needs for other ingredients. Good for it. While this is a happier ending than most containment procedures, imagine what might happen if it went free and was unable to get the compassionate treatment it received from Huxtable. It very well might just go back to its slicing and dicing ways with any creature it comes across. And finally, at number 1, SCP-4910. Teeth are terrifying. You can't tell me otherwise. Any movie that presents the audience with the destruction of teeth or the use of teeth for something other than the mastication of food will send chills through my entire body. So 4910 is a tough one for me to imagine. It is known as a predatory dental quadruped and has been seen over 100 times across continents. The precise details are unknown, mostly thanks to witnesses rapidly succumbing to the effects of 4910 attacks, usually resulting in the rapid overproduction of teeth leading to the inability to verbalize. A mouth so full of teeth you can't speak. Oh no. Recording devices left to capture images will develop dented in key components and as a result no longer work. Researchers have tried to get victims to draw the beast, but artistic representations are all over the place. However, they all focus on various amalgamations of teeth and gums. Gross. 4910 is capable of differentiating between regular civilians and people who seek to capture it. Civilians are used primarily for food, while adversaries are made into vessels for reproduction of anomalous properties. So if you're trying to get rid of 4910, you may well become part of it in a really gross way. All attempts at capture to date have failed. 13 mobile task agents are missing in action, with 7 needing to be euthanized and 5 falling to auto-transformative cannibalism. So little is actually known about this SCP, the imagination really takes the cake here.